Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 463rd episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today we have Mr. Sanjit Singh. He's the founder of a cool company. He's founded a couple of companies. But we're getting into how to sell smart to sell big. And we're going to talk about knowing your internal and external personas. And something cool that he brought up is how to get smarter in sales, why you need to get smarter in sales, because of how decision-making units are changing. And that's an interesting concept that we dive into because they have changed. You know, you hear about the complex sale and consultative selling, and you know, what does all that really mean? What's a transactional sale versus a relational sale? To some degree, people are splitting hairs just to sell you something. But to another degree, there's validity, small or large, in each of those points. Okay, so we talk about how to sell right now with over the phone, with email, with video, you know, which should be emphasized, if any. So you're in for a treat. But I want to shift gears real quick. This probably should be on the CRM Sushi podcast, but I just downloaded this Microsoft Edge. It's a browser, right? So it's not their Internet Explorer. I guess it's been out since March or even earlier. I don't know. I use Chrome and Safari on my Macs, and I use Chrome kind of because I have to, because a lot of platforms don't play nicely in Safari. I know HubSpot plays best in Chrome, as does Infusionsoft and most of the CRMs that I use. So, I stick with it. Plus, Chrome's got some very good extensions that I use. The HubSpot extension specifically ties into my G Suite, and it's a big time saver, and I'm all about efficiency. But I guess this is built on the Chromium engine. I don't know exactly. I'll have to dive into that. But I literally installed it in, I don't know, a couple minutes maybe. I had to look it up, downloaded it, boom. It pulled everything in, all of the extensions, they all work. And it seems much faster. Yeah, there's two main benefits, two reasons I did it. One is speed. I'm always seeing the resources tab on my Mac, showing me how much it's grinding down because of Chrome. I have too many tabs open. I do admit it. But the other thing is privacy, security. There's a lot of changes coming up. I'm working with a new client right now that specializes in helping companies be able to track and engage with their web visitors, doing it legally, despite the changes in iOS 14 that are coming, and despite the changes that Google's rolling out at the end of 2021. Privacy is a big thing, but it's cool to be on the inside, seeing how all this stuff is working and helping them craft their message. But privacy is it's no joke, and you need to take it seriously. And check out that Microsoft Edge. You might like it. I've literally only used it now for a few hours, and it's totally seamless. I can't even tell that I'm not on Chrome. So that's cool. Google, what was their motto, right? Do no evil or something. And man, I think they are evil personified. But I digress. But you know what's not evil personified? Is hanging out with us in the 30-Day Sales Growth group. You can get all of the digital content, right? All my videos in the workbook at makeeverysale.com. So right now, that's a digital download, super affordable. I'm keeping it low cost for the initial 75 buyers. So go check that out. But then if you want to engage weekly and ask more questions and be part of our Monday morning Zoom call, that's at 30daysalesgrowth.com. So you get all of the digital assets in the Make Every Sale program, but you get the engagement as well. Okay? So avail yourself of one of those and start growing your sales. Then after you sign up, come back and listen to this episode, because we're going to help you grow your sales even more. Sanjit Singh, all the way from San Diego. Are you going to help us create a sales system? Is that what we're going to get into? But welcome to the Sales Podcast, man. How the heck are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. So, interesting. Let me see here. helping B2B, early stage B2B startups transition from founder-led sales to creating a sales engine. Man, we're not just going to grind and just work harder. Can't we just work harder?
You can. That's always an option.
All right. So we actually need a system. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Sales is scalable, but I mean, my business is different. I don't know. I don't know, Sanjit. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I've heard it. I've heard that before. And it sounds like you've heard it.
I've heard it a few times. So in your current role, I'll link to it, BOLTT, bolt.io, right?
That's it.
So are you an outsourced, like a fractional VP of sales sort of role? Is that what you're doing there?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay. I think, this sort of came up on its own because, I was a little unusual in the sense that most co-founders of high-tech companies don't have a sales background, at least most of the ones I've run across. Usually it's a technical team that starts, creates a technology that's really exciting. And then, so I watched a lot of my fellow co-founders, that were more technical, really struggle on the sales and marketing side.
Everybody struggles on the sales and marketing side.
True that.
See all these startups, even bigger companies.
Yeah.
Well, we got a good product. We've got R&D. We've got an operations department. But I mean, what can really be done? Is sales really that prescriptive that an outsider can come in, figure out the model, lay it out, and it actually works?
Yes and no. What I do is, what's important to doing what I do is doing what you just said, but then also hiring a team, training a team, building weekly disciplines, measuring the right KPIs, and so on. I think all that together, once you get everyone in the habit of doing these things, knowing what to measure, knowing how to do the day-to-day, then I think you've built a system that's scalable. So I think training is a big part of making something scalable.
All right. That's assuming you have good training.
It is. Yeah.
Right? Perfect practice makes perfect.
Right.
I've always said in my marketing and my sales, when I'm talking to prospects, that most salespeople haven't had sales training. They've had product training.
Yeah. Very true.
The operations department comes in, the marketing department. They tell me why this little gizmo, it's a brighter screen and the camera and how much does it weigh? Go get them.
Right.
Like, go get who? And why? Why do they want to even talk to me? Right? Because you sent me something here. Where did I see it? How to get the name of the economic decision maker and how to get them at the final meeting and why you should ignore budgets. So all of those, that seems like that is never, ever taught in sales training.
That's a really good point. I think, and I guess I'm looking, it looks like you have a few gray hairs like I do.
I do. Thanks for pointing it out. This call is over. Bye-bye.
But, like the environment that you and I came up in, I think was different from the standpoint of, and I don't know how you got your training, but for me, I went to a big company first and they put me through rigorous sales training and we were doing, role plays and so we were trained in a very classic way. And what I see today is a lot like what you're saying, where it's more product training and sales is sort of an afterthought. And there's a lot of really young people doing it with not a lot of training. And I think it's tough on them. And I think, those kind of fundamentals that you just mentioned, how to find the economic buyer, how to get them to the final meeting are critical. And you're right, they're not taught.
So how do you change that, right? How do you get a company to open up and realize, we have this issue? Because a lot of companies, if you really ask them, really whatever you're selling, right?
Right.
If you're reaching out to them, they probably do not think they have an issue, or they don't think it's that big of an issue. Whatever it is you're selling, HR, payroll, merchant services, security, IT, sales training, marketing, social media marketing, right? No, we got that handled. It's like, no, you don't have it handled. Here's what, but how do you get them to listen?
It's a great question. I think, one of the old sales systems we used to use is you split a quadrant into you split a square into four quadrants, and then companies are either in a trouble mode or they're in even keel mode. I don't know if you remember that methodology, but you look for companies that the ones that I end up talking to they're sick and tired. They've been banging their head against the wall. The sales are flattening. There's nothing. It's kind of like a podcast you were talking about recently, where when people hit rock bottom, then their ears pop open, right? And I've been there. I've hit rock bottom. I know what it's like, and I get much more curious about how I can get off of rock bottom.
But how do we know if they're rock bottom? I mean, prospects aren't going to just say, "Yeah, sales are terrible." Just look, I got $500,000. Just here, take it all and come train my people.
Yeah.
They're not going to say that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think it depends on what you're selling. Mine consulting's a little different. I mean, I end up building a lot of relationships and getting business that way. But if you're selling on a larger scale, I think it's finding things that, finding things where you can see room for improvement. Like if you get a marketing email from a sales email, you see something on their website, see something in their positioning, you might be able to point out some things to them that you are already seeing where there's room for improvement, where there's slack. And I think open-minded leaders that want to really grow will be open to that.
So how do you reach them though? Because you say, how to get the names of the economic decision maker? Because again, most until you really get in close, get in tight, get them to open up, they're not just going to readily share this information.
Sure. I think maybe that leads into some of the data that I've been looking at recently that I think answers your question. The data that I've been looking at is from HubSpot. And I think it's really important because it's like basically pandemic era sales trends, like what's going on with salespeople? Are they successful right now? Are they unsuccessful? What's working? What isn't? So I think this data was through July. And what they're seeing is that deals really are starting to take off now, deals created and deals closed. But over the course of the pandemic, you've seen a lot more email volume and far worse engagement percentage-wise on those emails. It's down about 25%. And I think that leads into what you've been saying all along. It's let's get back on the phones. Let's do more personal outreach. So I think getting back on the phones, preparing for the call, saying something relevant, saying something that indicates that you know something about the company, what they're going through, what their challenges might be, asking good questions. I think it's just, again, it's back to fundamentals. And I think like what HubSpot certainly makes recommendations based on the data. They're saying send less emails, send it more personalized, make phone calls. So kind of the same kind of things I've been saying. Maybe investing in chat, trying to automate what you can, letting people self-serve. So these are some things. But once you do engage somebody, and you're saying, how do I get to the decision maker? How do I really, you ask, when you've asked the people that you can speak to, you can get on the phone, and you kind of, you're able to pull their pain points out, and of not only their pain points, but maybe the organizational pain points. And then you can craft something that's compelling, that they feel proud enough to take to their boss and involve you. One of the tricks I use is, if it gets to a stage where we're going to talk about a proposal or pricing, I might say, so whose name should I put on the DocuSign? That tells me who the decision maker is. I said, great. When we have the final meeting, is it at all possible that person could join us so we can I can answer all their questions then? That's one of the ways I try and get the decision maker involved if they're not already involved.
Right. Yeah, if you're creating DocuSign documents, though, I mean, maybe that's early on, like for the NDA or something. Mm-hmm. But, maybe is the economic decision maker always the decision maker? Maybe there's the CIO is signing off. The CIO is going to buy it. The CFO obviously has to authorize it and pay for it. But are they sometimes different, or do we need to get both?
I think, the research that I've been reading over the last 5-10 years is just saying, that the decision-making units are larger and larger. groups of people, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. And I've literally had it the case many times in the last 5, 10 years where I put the person's name on the DocuSign, can't get them in the final meeting, but I have most of the decision-making unit in that meeting, and it gets signed by that person who is never in any of the meetings. So,
right.
It's uncomfortable for someone like me who's grown up in a, you're failing if you don't get the decision maker there. It's uncomfortable, but it's just the way things are going. And I think, it's good to understand that that's just going to happen these days, right?
Yeah. Is it risky to move forward without that info, or is it just the way that it is, and then you just got to be on your toes and hope you can uncover it as you go?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. If you certainly try, you try to go with the ideal scenario, but you realize that sometimes these things are just more and more different than the way they used to be in terms of the way decisions are actually made. But what you can do is in the process, you ask a lot of questions. You flush out all the people, the names of the people involved and what they, what might be important to them. Try to get them in the next meeting or the final meeting, and then when you're at the final meeting, you kind of got what you got, and you make your best pitch, and then you try to get the deal.
Is it harder to get that info now, all over Zoom versus being in person?
It's a good question. I think I have not seen a big difference that way. I think if you're in a conversation and you are credible and you understand their business and you're bringing insights to them and you're showing, how you can really solve some pain points, I just think that no matter whether you're on Zoom or phone or whatever, people are much more willing to disclose information. And I think one of your recent guests said it about, selling without selling. If maybe it just comes with experience, but once you can get yourself to kind of relax into the conversation and not be so quick to try and, slam that proposal down or slam that, hey, let's have a demo. If you're trying not so hard to get to that and you're actually really listening deeply to what they're saying, you could draw a lot out of people, i.e. decision maker, sales process, who's all involved, all the things we really want to know.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've worked for myself since 2006. I've sold software like HubSpot and Infusionsoft since 2008, and I pretty much have never sold it in person.
Right.
I used to do some live events, little workshops, but I wouldn't sell it there. The close at the end was to meet afterwards or set a time to review if they were interested. And usually those would be remote as well. So
you've been quarantined since 2008.
Yeah, I told everybody, we homeschool our kids. Like, I didn't know I was leading this quarantine lifestyle.
Right. And did it take some getting used to sell not in person?
No. I mean, that's all I've ever done, at least on my own. And, I was in corporate America and obviously I sold in person, going back to 97. But
right.
Even selling high tech tickets, we would meet in person, but a lot was done remotely early on. I wouldn't just get on a plane. At one point I had all 18 Western states flying out of Austin, and I had 15 states early on, early 2000s, Texas all the way up to Wisconsin, over to Ohio. I had big territories. And so, and I hated just getting on a plane just because.
Yeah.
So I would really drill down and before I went out. So I don't know. I just eased right into it. And especially, when you're starting out and it's your own business, you don't have the money.
Right.
And I'm selling marketing automation and email marketing software.
Right.
So, I'm going to pre-qualify. I'm going to drip on people. And back then, it still works, but I think maybe it worked a little easier back then. It was a little bit newer. And people would say, I signed up at 3 or 4 different people's websites and you're like the only one using the software.
Yeah. Eat your own dog food.
And I'm like, wow, yeah, well, good. Go ahead and order with me. And they would. I mean, it was an easier
Good
sale.
advertisement.
Yeah, people don't use their own stuff. It's like you're selling Fords, but you pull up in a Chevy. And it's like, don't get caught doing that.
Totally. I couldn't agree more.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, but getting their name is one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got a pointer here about getting them at the final meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need them at the final meeting? Because sometimes, like the example I gave, sometimes there's the guy, the gal that's going to sign off. They're going to take the recommendation of their person, right? So when do you know, like, man, I got to press and really get the boss into this meeting versus, it's all good, let's keep going?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And I don't think, sometimes it's gut feel, sometimes but I think, if you have somebody is really pushing your case and they're smart and they could take, they can answer objections and they're credible within their organization, the more they are that way, the less and less perhaps you need the final decision maker. Now, for me, I'm going to try to get the person there anyway. But if you don't get them and you have a fairly good coach, like an advocate,
right?
Then you should be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, you got to have somebody pulling for you.
Yeah.
Singing your praises, because
right.
I remember I learned a long time ago, it's like 99% of the sale happens when you're not there.
Yeah. That's right.
Even if you're there for a 2-hour meeting,
yeah.
I mean, it's a 40-hour week, right? And if you're working on this for months and maybe you see them every other week for an hour or two, I mean, you start doing the math, you're not there a whole lot. So you got to be arming people to, sell on your behalf, at least promote the cause, right? Carry the flag.
Right. Yeah.
How much should we, like when we find that advocate, I mean, is it possible to love on them too much or just go ahead and give them whatever they need and let them make it happen?
Yeah, I don't know if it's possible to love on them too much. I think if you're giving them what they need, and we're not, being annoying by giving too much of ourselves into their calendar, like the old joke I like to make is, when a software person says they're going to give me a demo, I'm terrified of that. It's like at minute 1 they're going to start talking, and at minute 45, I'm going to get a chance to ask questions. And
right.
So I don't want to be that guy, right? So whatever I can do to kind of go along with their cadence as much as possible, certainly ask what I want to get out of it, but I try to go, follow their cues to the degree that makes sense to do that, to the degree it doesn't completely impede my sales process.
Mm-hmm. But, my marketing department said I've got to go through all 418 slides and the 87-page brochure. So right. I've got to go through all that.
Well, give it a try, my man. I hear that a lot. And, but I think if we're following the golden rule, I increasingly just try to say, what would I want to hear from a salesperson? Okay. Let's find out what's really important to them. And let's talk about those things, kind of get their permission as we go along. And the other thing I read this other book that the other day called Essentialism by Greg McKeown.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've heard of that book, but I love it because he's so good at telling you to focus on the things that matter. And I think in selling, to me, that's if you tell them 400 features, they're never going to remember the 3 that really matter most and that you want them to remember based on the pain points they had.
Yeah.
But if you told them 3, they got a much better chance of remembering, and it's much more impactful.
Yeah, and the thing is, their 3 may be different than what I think the top 3 are.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And that's where I always see people would always ask me, how do you sell so much Infusionsoft and HubSpot?
Yeah.
We have these long meetings. And I'm like, because you're trying to boil the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
They want to show them everything that they love. And I'm like,
Right.
I remember a long time ago. So I was selling mobile homes in Mobile, Alabama. All right. And one time these people came in and they're like, we'd like to look at some trailers. They go, manufactured homes.
Yeah.
Right? And I said, you can call it whatever you want. You buy it from me.
That's right.
I'm like, let's go look at some trailers.
Yeah.
So I don't care what you call it.
Right.
And so, but I would use their language.
Right.
Right.
See, that's a sales guy who's listening. I mean,
yeah.
We've all sold to salespeople who don't really listen to us. They're still they're like, well, the TX75, and they're just throwing out, these little terms that they assume I know. And I say, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is.
Yep.
Can you explain that to me?
Yep.
But if they want to call it something else, we'll call it that. And, if you find out what they really want to focus on and why and what problem it's solving, and we just talk about that. Because, there are a million things we could talk about. There's just not a lot of point in dragging them down all those roads.
How do you take control, though? Right? You get these hard chargers, the high Ds, right, on your Myers-Briggs. And, all right, Sanjit, look, I only got, I know we said an hour, but I only got 20 minutes. And, go ahead and just start, show me the software and, show me your consulting and, I'll get back to you. So go.
Yeah. Well, if you have 20 minutes, then I want to be respectful of your time. And so I'm going to try and target 20 minutes. If they're, I don't want to just come at a high D, with my high D and just challenge them, unless there's a good reason to do it, which there might be later. But, at the outset, hey, you have 20 minutes? Let's talk. What I find people who say that, when we're talking about their issues, their problems, solutions to their problems, we're way past 20 minutes and they're not even looking at their watch anymore.
Right.
And almost every time they say that. Have you noticed that as well?
Oh yeah. I think it's a bluff.
Yeah.
I mean, I challenge them.
Do you? What do you say?
Oh yeah. Cause Oren Claff talks about like absorbing frameworks,
Sure.
If we agreed to an hour and you come in, right, you're 5 minutes late and you say you only got 20 minutes. I'm hitting it right there in the head. I'm like, man, we agreed to an hour and I don't really, I can do it justice. So you got your calendar in front of you. I mean, let's go ahead and figure out a time that works. We can get the full hour in so we don't have to shortchange this. I'm going to call them on their shit right then and there, man, because they're trying to push me around. Right? Because they want to get in control.
Yeah.
Like, oh no.
Yeah. No, I think you sometimes do have to challenge them. I don't know if I would challenge them on that. And I actually did read Oren Claff's book. I've had a chance to meet him, and I do like that framework. And I do think, if I'd rather challenge them on if they're saying something that I have a lot of data, to be able to challenge them on, that has a lot to do with the solution we're proposing. That's probably an area where I would challenge more so than on maybe the time.
Yeah.
But I think challenging definitely makes sense when I feel the timing's right. But I guess if that works for you, I think it's great.
Yeah.
It's an hour.
It depends on their style, right? I mean, are they like bum rushing? Because, when I'm buying, that's what I do, right? I'm trying to get people off their game.
Right.
I don't want to pitch. It's like, don't tell me this stuff that, you've practiced and, you're going to play your games and try to corner me into something.
Yeah.
Like, I want the truth.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I teach my people, ask questions that they can't answer.
Yeah.
Because that's when you start to
make them think. Yeah.
That's when you get to the truth. I just like like when you see the police, right? Where were you at 10:37 p.m., August 2nd,
Yeah.
What? And, if you weren't prepared for that question,
right,
you're probably going to give me the truth because you didn't.
Are there any favorite questions you have that are like that?
Well, it depends on the scenario, but just in general, I don't want to be the one doing all the talking.
Yeah.
Right. So you get a guy like
Agreed.
that doing that bum rushing, hey, yeah. Well, Wes, yeah, we want a demo of HubSpot. So go ahead, show us. And most people like, okay, here's the dashboard,
right,
and you can configure and reporting and look, I'll show you admin. I mean,
there's
5,000 things for me to show you.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't show you that software in 6 months. So they always talk about having an elevator pitch.
Yeah.
I call it an elevator question.
Yeah.
Like, well, go ahead and show me software. So I'd love to show you software. Where would you like me to start? Right. Well, I don't know. We've never seen it. I understand.
Yeah.
Why are you even interested? Tell me what you're looking for or what you're lacking. And if this software does it, we can start there. Oh, okay. And then boom, now they're talking. Right?
Yeah.
But they wanted to take control. I didn't want to give them control, but I can't just say, no, I'm asking the question. I mean, you can't do that, right? You got to be nice about it.
Yeah.
And then they just open up.
Yeah, that's I think the same paradigm I've always had. This saying I heard a long time ago: he who asks the questions controls the conversation.
Yep.
People want to know, how do you get control? You say, just ask questions. Just keep asking really thoughtful questions where, like you said, they can't say yes, no. They don't have a quick answer. Because once you get them talking about their world, I love the idea of, like you're saying, doing what they're not necessarily expecting from me, and usually that's just listening. They're not expecting a salesperson to listen, or their posture is not really ready for that. So when you really get them talking, they go deep and they share a lot of stuff, and that's great. That's what we want.
Yeah. I forget who. I need to go back and look. It might have been on the CRM Sushi podcast. One of these companies that does, they analyze the calls and they learn. It's a little bit of artificial intelligence, and it'll start spitting up replies, right? But, because it was interesting. So I always said, whoever's asking the questions is in control of the conversation, But what they discovered was it was pretty much 50-50 on the talking, but the hard questions were asked and answered early in the relationship. And like on a complex sale, you're assuming there's a couple of calls, right? A few calls. So the hard things were asked and answered. Okay, there might be something here. Then it was like a lot more of a dialogue versus a grilling. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're saying that better salespeople are willing to ask those uncomfortable probing questions early. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. You have
that's
to.
What the data showed. Yeah,
I've always said I'd rather hear no. Hearing no early is a win.
Right.
Okay. Go ask the prettiest girl in school if she wants to go on a date. No. Like, well, all right. It's kind of rude. Everybody's watching. I'm a little embarrassed. Maybe I just ask her in private. Yeah. She says no. All right. My feelings are hurt. All right. I'll ask the second prettiest girl. But it's better than, hey, you want to go to prom? Well, let me think about it.
Right.
What? And then a week goes by and a month goes by and,
right.
3 days before prom, she's like, no, I got another date.
Yeah.
Now I'm hosed, right? I went and rented a tuxedo, got a corsage, made reservations, got a limo, put a deposit down. I can't get my money back. And now I can't get a date because it's too late, So, I'd rather hear no early.
Totally. It's part of qualifying. I think there's a lot of salespeople talking to all the wrong companies, and they got to figure out what those real sales signals are and start qualifying on those. I totally agree.
Why? It's so woefully inadequate though at most companies. Are companies just started by like techie people, and so they just think, hey, we'll add a new blue blinky button and they'll buy. We don't really. This thing sells itself.
Yeah. I think so. I think there's a lot of tech folks that don't have a deep appreciation of sales and marketing. Or maybe that's an understatement. And then vice versa. I think sometimes we go out and we say, just do that feature in there. And there's like, that feature is, 6 months of work. So it's good to the extent we can understand each other's worlds better. But, Steve Blank, who's a big startup guy, as you may know, he talks about, to be a big success, you actually need 4 personas inside of a startup. And he calls them the visionary, the hacker, the designer, and the hustler. And most startups that I meet don't have a hustler. And that's kind of what we do, revenue, business model, sales, marketing. But you can't really be a big, huge success in the startup world, according to Steve Blank, without all 4 personas. So usually they're not on the initial team, and then you have to find that person and add them. And that's how I run into a lot of startups that are just way under what they could be selling if they had just gone out and found somebody a little earlier that knew what they were doing.
So tell me those again: the visionary, the hacker, and the hustler. What was the other one?
And the designer. The designer to really think through the customer's experience. Yeah.
Right. I like that. Yeah, I mean, Michael Gerber talks about that, kind of like the E-Myth, right? Talks about
Yeah, that's right.
The entrepreneur, the manager, the technician. So the 3 types. So
yeah, this is a little bit of a spin on that. That's right. Yeah,
that makes sense. How do you find those people, though? How do you onboard like that first, that second, that third person? Because, it's those early hires that are so vital.
You're talking about building the sales team or actually building out these 4? Building the sales team, well, that's why I exist in the startup that I'm in, because I do run into a lot of people who they've had an SDR. It's like, well, the SDR didn't really do anything. And then we had another SDR, he didn't really do anything. I'm like, really? Let me dig in here. And, I find out their value propositions really weak. They're not targeting well. They're not asking all the right questions like you're talking about. There's much deeper issues than just, and of course, they may very well have not hired the right person, or even know what to look for. Maybe they didn't write a scorecard. They're sort of asking questions off the top of their head in interviews instead of a sort of a disciplined approach to that. So there's a lot of reasons they end up with, I think, a weak team, no team, or they'll go out and another mistake we see is, they say, well, this guy was a VP at IBM, so he's going to be in charge of sales at our startup.
No.
And that guy hasn't made a sales call in a long time. He just kind of manages a sales team. So obviously that ends up being expensive and often a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, I had that exact thing. I was one of those startups I was with. Yeah. I was in Austin, and I had the whole Western U.S., and we were growing. And so I moved to California. It was more of my territory anyway. And they hired a guy out of Denver, and he came from a big company.
Yeah.
And, like big company, he had somebody for everything. Booking his travel, right. Just everything.
Didn't want to get his hands dirty. Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, dude, good luck with that. And he lasted 6 months, right?
Right.
But in the meantime, I got to chop up my territory, onboard him, teach him, hand over my stuff I've developed, watch him just drive it in the ground. And I'm like, how does a startup with 11 salespeople make that mistake? Hire this older guy, big company experience. I'm like, because, they were saying we were going to get that big, right?
Right.
We never got over like 35 million.
Right.
And then they imploded.
Yeah.
Like, good grief. How do they make those fundamental mistakes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's just stemming from the idea that you don't recognize the value of having a person from the same size company that's matched to where you want. Like if you're trying to grow from 10 million to go 20 to 30, hire somebody that's gone exactly that route if you can, because there's specific challenges in those revenue ranges that you're going to have to, specific scaling type issues that you need to deal with. And I think, it's just people don't really understand the importance of it. Like I had a guy, CEO of a pretty good sized company, and he wanted to bring in a VP of sales, and the VP of sales was super transactional and low relationship on the relationship building side. And it was a university market, which are long sales cycles, deep relationships, everybody knows everybody. And I just said, I'm telling you right now, that's going to be a disaster. And he took my advice, thankfully, and I think avoided what would have been a really tough tough road.
Do you get into assessments like personality, new hire assessments?
I've seen them. I've actually looked at those at various times, and I've actually talked to lawyers about them, and they say that I haven't been able to find any that can really prove with data that they are trying to measure the things that we're trying to measure, and then have found that I can actually measure the things I'm trying to measure just by asking, detailed questions in an interview. And then they also said it could be considered prejudicial. So I haven't really adopted any that I feel strongly about, or I haven't seen enough data to convince me, but I'm certainly open to them. And I think what they're trying to do is really helpful.
How do you cut through the clutter though? Because a lot of times the last sale a salesperson makes
right
is their interview.
Yeah. I think if you ask somebody, kind of walk through their resume and you look at the time periods they were at places, how long did they stay? Ask them about what deal size did you typically target? What was your, roughly how much did you close a month, or how much did you close a year? And then you say, oh, well, that's, you kind of get a sense for that's pretty good performance. And then you start saying, okay, and so, tell me what were the fundamental, tell me about a time when you had a really tough sale to close. And you could tell if their stories don't quite match what they're telling you in terms of their performance. And that's where the experience comes in. I think you can start to figure out, like I say, wait a minute, but you said that, this revenue on this deal was this much, but your average is here. So that means you would have to close this many per month. And so the numbers just start not adding up if they're not really being fully straight with you. And again, it takes a little bit of experience to sort of know how to think about these things. But yeah, sometimes they will try and snow you a little bit. And I think just questions can flesh it out. And, tell me a time when, those kind of story questions instead of, are you great at sales?
Right.
Right? Those questions work much better.
So are you trying to teach this, impart this knowledge into the brains of your clients so you can kind of be removed? Are you trying to work yourself out of a job?
Yeah, I go.
Yes, give that knowledge to them, or is there a system you can give them, or?
Yeah, I think there's so much that a guy like you or a guy like me, after doing this for so long, there's so much we know that I can't teach them everything. But what I can do is say, for your business, this is the value proposition I think will work best. We've of course tested it, and I jump on the phones and we're making calls. And then, when we have a system that's starting to work well, then we teach it to the reps, and we teach them how to hire people, and we teach them weekly disciplines. So from that standpoint, yeah, I'm generally trying to be in and out of there in 3 to 6 months, because by the time they get to their A round, sometimes I'll even help them, hire my replacement, like an actual VP of sales.
Right.
But I am trying to build in to the organization all the knowledge and training and everything that I think they'll need. But that's appropriate for them, as opposed to teaching everything, I could possibly teach them about sales.
Right. So what's the size of the company? Because you mentioned an A round. Yeah. So do you have a sweet spot you like to be in?
Yeah, I like to be, pre-seed or post-seed. But usually by the time they get all the way to an A round, then they have a sales team. Whether they're effective or not, it's irrelevant. They usually have somebody in there, and it's it doesn't. And also, I find that the earlier stage is really fun, because they're open to changing their positioning and the way they're crafting their pitch and all. And later stage, they're a little less open to it. But that's the fun part for me is really crafting, and then saying, hey, maybe there's, maybe we could also find some channel partners and some other ways to grow this business other than just the sales team. And we would, maybe do both of those things.
Are you ever brought back in later, oh man, that dude was a loser, can you come back? And
it's funny you say that. I got an email today from a CEO I worked with. I finished my engagement a couple months ago, and he sent me an email.
To come back.
Yeah.
So how do they find you, or how do you find them? Is it word of mouth now, or do you have a little bit of outreach?
Yeah, I do a little bit. I do outreach to earlier stage companies, but this is the kind of thing where they have to have a ton of trust in you. more so than they would if I were just selling them a product or something like that.
Yeah.
So, having a network and building that network has been really helpful for me to, within the startup world, to people who know that this company needs help in this area, and then they think of me, and I appreciate the referrals.
Yeah. And so do you have a small team of, do all of you kind of do the same thing, or are they like your team, or so when somebody hires you, they hire your whole team of experts to help?
Yeah. They're hiring our team, and
Okay.
I'm usually doing most of the customer interfacing. And I, at some point I may get another one or two people like me, but for now, myself and my team can handle quite a few customers and make them happy.
Yeah, because it's not like you probably don't have to be full time, right? I mean, if you've done this long enough, you can see where the gaps are.
Right. Exactly.
But how do you keep? Sometimes the customer thinks, "Oh, we're different. This is, we're at the critical stage. You need to be here. We're doing 100 hours a week. You've got to be here. I mean, you're just going to miss too many important things if you're not here all the time."
I haven't had that problem. And particularly, they're actually quite surprised at how fast we're able to get things done.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, I know where to turn the screws. It's not like I turned 500 screws this week. I just know which ones to turn.
Right. Yeah. I equated to jiu-jitsu, or I equate everything to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So my son,
I was actually, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was in martial arts a long time. I was hoping we'd get to talk about it more.
Yeah. And it was like the day I roll with a guy, like I was just dragging the day. I don't know why, man. I went to bed early. I was tired yesterday. I was tired this morning. I'm like, oh man, roll this big black belt first. And I'm like, oh man, now I'm really tired. He puts me this younger, new white belt. Not too new, but still a white belt. And how about it? He's in real estate. He's been super busy, hadn't been in a while.
Right.
He used to give me fits, I'd control him, but it was effort.
Yeah.
Like a year ago when he was starting, and like today, I submitted him twice, and was yucking it up and kind of picking on him, and because
effortless. It's effortless. Yeah, you've been training a lot more than he has.
And I'm like, and that was being tired, right? I mean, I didn't show up with my A game, but because I'm just better, tactically and strategically,
right.
I could defend his attacks and set up my attacks with less energy,
right.
And to come out ahead. And, because I've had to get better at that, in sales, because I succeeded early because I was a hard worker. I was just an energetic white belt in sales, right? I was just not going to lose.
Yeah.
And so I would grind it out. And
that's exactly me. Yeah, too.
And I felt like, well, I've got to put in all this effort. They're paying me all this money. It's like, well, they're not paying me for effort. They're paying me for results.
Right.
So let me just get it done.
Yeah.
But do you ever have to hold back? I feel bad sometimes. Like in writing comes pretty easy to me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll hold back because, like, if somebody's in a bind, I'll literally I'll do a Zoom call and I'll do their writing for them while they watch and give it to them. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But it's like,
I think I know what you're saying. You mean like overwhelming them?
Well, if they pay a lot of money, they expect it to be like this 4-month thing that you belabor over. It's like, look, dude, the reality is I'm going to go have a drink. I'm going to noodle on this while I sleep. I'm going to get up in the morning and write it.
Yeah.
So it's like, you want me I can wait 4 months and send it to you, or I can give it to you at the end of the week. Like you choose, but it's the same price. It's like they pay a lot, so they expect all this big effort from you.
Right. Yeah. That's, I've thought about that, and I thought, I don't want to do business that way. I'm just going to charge a flat monthly fee, and it's reasonable, and it's a little bit more than they would charge for an SDR, pay for an SDR, and I'm just going to give them as much as I possibly can, and that's how I'll get referrals. So, and I like being in the really fast moving, game. Even if I could slow it down and make more money, it's not fun for me. And it's fun, like you said, you spent so much energy doing this stuff when you were younger in your career. Now you can, climb a mountain in one leap now. And so you want to do that. You want to use the leverage that you have for the benefit of your clients.
Yeah, for sure. Amen. Well, fantastic. So we mentioned at the beginning, so it's BOLTT.io, right?
That's right. Bolt.io.
Fractional sales leadership for startups. So those folks kind of in that little sweet spot that you mentioned.
Yeah.
If they're needing some help. So I guess like they're in between the like amorphous amoeba early stage. They're doing some stuff, but like just before they get to that next level, like you can come in and give them that shot in the arm, so they're positioned to get some real money and not waste it, right?
Right. Yeah, they're just beyond the stage where they're kind of a blob, and then now they're a blob with a little bit of funding and product market fit, and now it's a matter of helping the founder see that, hey, we're going to create an engine. You're not going to have to do every sales call. This is we're going to build something that's really truly scalable, and they love that.
Yep. Amen. All right. Well, we will send them that way. And then you ever come to Temecula for some wine tasting?
I will as soon as this thing's over. The pandemic.
Come on, man. It's all outdoors. It's all good.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe I will come. They have a beautiful downtown that they're doing the river walk, right?
Not really a river walk, but yeah, I mean, I was in Old Town Friday and it was hopping. We sat outside in the patio, and yeah, the wineries are, you can't go inside and taste, you get your bottle, wherever you want, and sit outside. It's all good.
That sounds like a good idea. I think I will do that.
So if you come up, let me know.
I will. Thanks for the invite.
Very cool.
Okay.
Sanjit, thanks for coming on, man. Have a great day.
Wes. You too. Cheers.
So email's picking up, but engagement is dropping. I can confirm that. Get back on the phone, send personalized emails. I've talked about, had Ethan Burke on this podcast not too long ago. He's one of the executives over at BombBomb. I've used Bonjoro as well, and really enjoy those platforms. They are effective. They do stand out. I've been saying for a year and a half now, you got to do what doesn't scale. Even before COVID came around and all the chaos, you got to do what doesn't scale. Make people feel special. People will pay for two things: exclusivity and experiences. How do you make them feel? Okay, make them feel unique. Make them feel like they're exclusive. Make them feel like they're not just a number. And you're going to have a lot more success. Okay, but like anything, easier said than done. We talk about this in broad terms, but how do you apply it? And it's the ongoing, it's the weekly encouragement, it's the nudging, it's the nagging. I'm a nagger. I will nag you to death. If you say you're going to do something in a group, I will hold you to it. You need that. I need that. We all need that. So come hang out, 30daysalesgrowth.com. The content is great, but it's the application. About an hour from now, hour and a half from now, I'll be on the mats in jiu-jitsu. You can watch things all the time. But 6 minutes of sparring beats 66 minutes of watching videos, beats 600 minutes of watching videos. Now, that being said, just last week, I watched, actually it was Friday morning, I watched a video to counter a certain type of pass. And I was able to, I didn't intentionally do it. This guy was doing this pass on me. He's a higher belt, brown belt actually, retired Navy guy, really good. And I did that defense, and it worked like a charm. Now, I don't know it well enough to teach it. I was trying to show my son. I was like, oh, no. I watched it. I immediately did it. Got a little lucky. But I need to know it well enough that I can teach it. Okay? And that's where there's nuances and there's subtleties. I'm going to work with some of the higher belts tonight on that. And that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu, is working with people, working with peers, even lower belts. I get to teach sometimes. Working with the new guys helps me hone my skills, but I'm always able to work with peers. I'm able to work with higher belts to give me different perspective, and members in the group have different experiences, different levels of expertise in certain things. So you get input and feedback from a lot more people than just me, which is a benefit. Okay, 2 and 3 and 10 heads are better than 1. So come grow with us. All right, 30daysalesgrowth.com. Thanks for listening. I'll go sell something.